this lesson, we will determine missing angle measures, and we will read the problems carefully, and we hope to answer the essential question: how can we apply math to everyday situations? In our last lesson, we had discussed angle relationships. We talked about complementary angles, we also talked about supplementary angles, and we also talked about vertical or parallel angles. Remember when we talked about the relationships of complementary angles, we used an equation. Since this angle here equals 90 degrees, we could write this equation as x plus 55 equals 90. And we know that this angle is equal to 180 degrees. So we could find the value of x in an equation with x plus 63 equals 180 degrees. Do you remember how many degrees are in a triangle? Well, if we have a square, for example, each corner or angle is 90 degrees. So if we were to cut that in half, you would have 90 here. And what would this be? Half of 90 is 45. And then this would be 45. And if you add them all together, it equals 180 degrees. So it's fair for us to say that the total number of degrees in all three angle measures is equal to 180 degrees. Now, having said this, if you knew that this was 90 and the whole thing equaled 180, and let's say you didn't know what these two were, we could write an equation to find that out, couldn't we? How many x's do you have in this problem? Okay, so we could say 2x and plus 90 equals what? 180. And to find the corners, all you would have to do is solve for x. All of this leads us up to today's lesson. Look at your assignment, sum of angles in triangles. Number 1, write and solve an equation to determine the value of x. This looks just like the problem we just set up. So we know the total will equal 180 degrees. We also have one corner that's 90 degrees. We have another angle that is 42 degrees. And then our missing angle, x. So what we now have is x plus 42 plus 90 equals 180. And now you would just solve. So x plus, what is 42 and 90? 132. So you could have x plus 132 equals 180. And to get x by itself, you would subtract 132 from both sides. This cancels, and x will equal 10, 9, 8, 7, 48. So in number 1, x equals 48 degrees. Go ahead and complete problems 2 and 3 just like you would on number 1. Look at numbers 4, 5, and 6. The instructions say determine the missing measure in each triangle with the given angle measures. So it's going to be just like problems 1 through 3, except you don't have the drawing. Number 7 through 10, just answer the problems. Read it carefully. Draw a picture for yourself if you need. Now, look at problems 11, 12, and 13. It says to classify the marked triangle in each object by its angles and by its sides. So there's a couple of names for each of these figures. If you look at number 11, these two sides with these little markings tell you that they're the same sides. What do we call triangles that have two sides that are the same? Okay, that would be naming it by its side. And then what kind of angles are these here? So you're going to give two names for each figure. On this particular figure, it is isosceles, and it is also acute. All right, so on number 12, you'll need two names for the figure here, the triangle, and you would need two names for this triangle on number 13 as well. Numbers 14, 15, and 16 are just like the ones that we had completed at the top. If you'll turn your paper over, we now see problem-solving practice for sum of angles in triangles. Let's look at number 1 together. Each lapel on a suit jacket is in the shape of a triangle. A lapel is simply a collar on a jacket. The three angles of each triangle measure 47, 68, and 65. Classify the triangle by its angles. So if we have a 47, 68, and a 65, what does that tell you about all of the angles? Well, let's go back and review the different angle types, or the triangle types by their angles. Remember, we can classify with the sides. If all three sides are the same, we have equilateral. And if two sides are the same, this is isosceles. And if none of the sides are the same, we call that scalene. We can also classify by their angles. So let's take a few notes here. Remember, we can classify and we usually have acute, obtuse, and straight. And these are the main ones. So when we look at our problem here, we're asked to classify the triangle by its sides. By its angles. So if we have 47, 68, and 65, what do we know about the angles of the triangle? They're all acute. Therefore, the triangle is acute. Looking at number 2, it says a naval distress flag is in the shape of a triangle. The three sides of the triangle measure 5 feet, 9 feet, and 9 feet. Classify the triangle, this time by its sides. 5 feet, 9 feet, and 9 feet. Look back at your information that we had just written earlier. Okay, and from there you can determine the type of triangle there. Number 3, the supports of a wood table are in the shape of a right triangle. Determine the third angle of the triangle if the measure of one of the angles is 23. This is a good time, I think, for an equation. It's asking you to identify a missing angle. We could use X for that. Okay? We know that the other angle is 23 degrees. And it's a right triangle. So that also tells us that the other angle is 90 degrees. And we know that all of this totals 180 degrees. From here, you would just solve for x, and that will give you your answer. Go ahead and complete the remaining problems 4, 5, and 6 also on your own. Be prepared to share your solutions tomorrow in class. Any problems not completed during class time is homework and is also due tomorrow. If you need any help with this, please come by and see me after school or in the morning.